Ebony Vale is a top-secret government-run school in Nigeria that raises orphan girls into killing machines. These little girls have not known love and have been trained to kill ever since they can walk. The headmaster, Richard, teaches them to not have attachments, as it is a weakness for a secret agent. This principle doesn't sit right with one of the top students, 19. 19 wants to have a family so badly, but no one will accept her in Ebony Vale. In addition, she is the best in all fields. This makes her hated by her friends, especially her rival, 20. 19 becomes the first in her class to be activated due to her achievements. Her first mission is to take a briefcase from a man, and she gets it done perfectly within minutes. Being sent on a mission means that 19 has some freedom to see the world, but this experience also makes her jealous of the mundane life of girls her age. On her next mission, she takes some me time to gather intel on what normal kids do. Movies after movies, she becomes more immersed in the teenage lifestyle. Back at Ebony Vale, 19 is assigned to capture a notorious American arms dealer, Grace Peterson. The assignment disappoints 20 once more. Before commencing the mission, 19 is caught reading magazines during the briefing. Richard scolds her a bit, but still chooses her to do the mission anyway. Peterson is a smart woman who loves to take out Ebony Vales. To catch her off Georgiard, 19 pretends to be caught and takes out Peterson's underlings. She launches a balloon and ties it to Peterson before she knows it. Suddenly, a plane flies above them, seizing the rope and sending them both flying. Unfortunately, Peterson still has a Georgian with her. She shoots at 19, making her fall into the river below. Peterson is brought on board and meets Richard. They chat for a while, as if they used to be close relatives. Below, 19 survives the fall with no injuries. When she is about to answer Richard's call, the thought of escaping Ebony Vale crosses her mind. She dumps her radio, making her marked as inactive. 19 is finally freed from her prison to chase her dream of being a normal teenage girl. To blur her past, she goes as an orphan named Aisha Williams and enrolls herself in a student exchange program. She picks out the happy Olalades to be her host family. Arriving in Newton, USA, Aisha is picked up by the Olalades. She awkwardly hugs the welcoming Mrs. Olalade and her boy Donald. Tina, the daughter, on the other hand, is not so welcoming and keeps a distance. Aisha hugs a random man, thinking he is Mr. Olalade, only to find that Mrs. Olalade has divorced. Arriving at home, Aisha sees Mrs. Olalade's warm gesture and is so grateful for it. Over dinner, Aisha immediately makes friends with Donald, who is obsessed with being a ninja. On the other hand, Tina is so hard to get through to. After dinner, Aisha is back in her room to map out her cover. She uses pictures of magazine models as her cover and ends up overdressing for her first day at high school. She immediately becomes the center of attention and is bullied by the kids. Seeing this, Tina calls her freak show and reluctantly lends her spare clothes. This makes Aisha both sad and confused. After changing clothes, Aisha nervously waits for her turn to come up to the stage and be introduced. Philip introduces himself to Aisha and calms her down. Philip works the stage lighting, and Aisha cites the wrong magazine about it, saying that it's only for geeks who can't get into the band. Despite this, Philip is attracted to Aisha and becomes the first person to be kind towards her. He reminds Aisha that the school bullies can be so mean to her. Finally, the time comes for Aisha. The school bully, George, immediately humiliates her in front of the class, followed by the crowd. Luckily, the school star Wallace comes to her rescue. He sings her a song, and Aisha immediately falls for his charming gaze. All the girls are also infatuated with him. Wallace calms Aisha down and invites her to join his band, Emoticon. Lunchtime arrives, and Aisha is invited by the school cheerleaders to join their table. However, she declines it. According to her intel from Mean Girls, cheerleaders are sneaky vixens who will humiliate her once she puts her trust in them. Aisha then comes to her first in-class session. She sits beside Philip, her new friend. They immediately get close as they can relate to one another's puns. After the session ends, the teacher announces that tomorrow the students will have to sit with their designated partners. Aisha fixes her eyes on Wallace. As Aisha sees Wallace going out of the room, George comes to slap her cheeks, but she single-handedly takes him down. At night, Aisha infiltrates the lab to change the seat chart, putting her beside Wallace. With her ninja skills, she gets it done swiftly and then quietly gets out of the room. In the morning, Aisha confidently sits beside Wallace. but she ends up fighting over him with some girls. However, Wallace is chosen to be the lab assistant by the teacher, as he has a thing for Wallace. After the session, two girls from before inform Aisha of an opening to be the school's mascot. Aisha knows from her research that the school mascot is only for losers, but the girls manage to convince her anyway. They trick her into believing that she can get into the backstage and develop a romantic memory with Wallace by being the mascot. She picks up the costume and readies herself to perform the mascot dance. After getting the grasp of it, she goes to the audition as the only participant. Aisha masterfully dances with the prop in her hand, doing some flips before ending her performance with a loud macho shout. Of course, she is accepted for the job right away. After some homework, Aisha notices that she is being monitored by a mysterious van. The van even follows her to school and makes her mind wander. The competition day finally arrives, and Aisha is in her Viking costume, dancing to cheer the day up. Suddenly, some masked men get out of the van and try to kidnap Aisha. Despite being outnumbered, Aisha easily defeats them one by one, thanks to her rigorous hand-to-hand combat training from Ebony Vale. She even manages to throw her axe at a fleeing kidnapper. It turns out they are students from a rival high school, and they tried to kidnap Aisha for tradition. Realizing that she has been fooled by the girls, she rushes out of the scene, embarrassed. Philip chases after her and tries to comfort her, but the effort is unsuccessful. At home, Aisha is frustrated due to her failure to act like a normal girl. She feels that high school is so much worse than her rigorous training. Mrs. Olalade hears the commotion and talks to her like a real parent would. She calms her down, saying that it's all a normal thing in high school and that Aisha should just stay true to herself. Aisha gets back to school with eyes fixated on her once more. However, this time, they are accompanied by hand claps and cheering shouts. The fight that she had earlier has been recorded and has gone viral overnight. Even the bullies cheer upon seeing her. Suddenly, Wallace approaches Aisha and invites her to a jamming session. She arrives early, and Philip surprises her from behind. She accidentally takes him down, causing Philip to suffocate. As they chat, Philip finds that Aisha is weird when she explains some martial arts, but he accepts it with an honest smile. They continue to chat. Suddenly, Wallace and his band come to break the cheerful reunion. Wallace steals Aisha from Philip and asks for her opinion on his new song. As Aisha chats with Wallace, she notices that she is not much of a fit with him, but still wants him. Seeing her reaction, Wallace invites Aisha to George's party that weekend, to which she accepts excitedly. As she walks her way home, a car follows her from behind, and she is caught off guard by Ebony Vale. She wakes up tied to a chair and meets Richard for the first time in a while. Richard accuses her of working for another organization and intends to squeeze the intel out of her. Richard decides to inject her with a truth serum. The serum confuses her senses and activates her emotions. With tears in her eyes, Aisha confesses that she doesn't want to be an assassin and wants to be a normal girl. Richard finally lets her go on one condition, that she bids farewell to Newton and comes back to Ebony Vale as 19. Aisha is then dropped off in a drunk state due to the serum. She confronts Tina, saying that Tina has been putting up a facade of being a tough, lonely girl. She advises her to pull back the veil and forge true connections with her peers. She says all of that without consent before finally passing out. The next day, Aisha sits with Philip over lunch. They talk deeply about what they really want to do with their lives. Aisha feels that she hasn't done anything useful in her life, and Philip comforts her by saying that she has always been impressive in his eyes. Despite the kind words, Aisha leaves Philip to sit at Wallace's table. Before leaving, she invites Philip to George's party next Friday. Back at home, Tina and Mrs. Olalade are George about whether Aisha should be allowed to go to the party after being home drunk the night before. Mrs. Olalade insists that she should go, and Tina should accompany her to ensure her safety. The two finally arrive at George's house. The party is totally crazy with loud music and alcohol, just like what Aisha imagined. However, 20, who is under the alias Sandra, is also there to keep an eye on Aisha and ruin her mood. Sandra is more socially adept and instantly liked by the kids. Meanwhile, Tina enters a bathroom and meets a drunken George. George knows Tina's name and invites her to join him for tequila. Deciding to pull back the veil like Aisha said, Tina opens up to George and joins him upstairs. Aisha and Sandra see the crowd and target one Georgie Wallace. The two immediately approach him, but of course Wallace chooses Aisha over Sandra. Back in the bathroom, Tina and George find that they have a lot in common and start to develop a friendly relationship. Philip arrives at the party and stumbles upon the two, who are having fun. He asks where Aisha is and goes downstairs to meet her. Sadly, Philip sees Aisha kissing Wallace. He immediately leaves in tears. In the morning, Tina is so drunk that she sleeps on the couch. Wallace invites Aisha for waffles, and she feels bad for leaving Tina there after the party. Tina comes home with a new tattoo on her face. Mrs. Olalide is mad at Aisha for leaving Tina alone for breakfast. However, Aisha and Tina start getting closer after the incident. On her way to school, Aisha is confronted by Richard. He demands that Aisha promise to get back to Ebony Vale. He is concerned for Aisha's safety as Peterson has escaped from the facility. Aisha doesn't want to be at Ebony Vale anymore, especially when things are getting sweet for her in high school. She insists on not going back. Hearing this, Richard agrees but warns that Aisha will be on her own if Peterson comes to get her. Having missed the bus to school, Aisha drives with Tina in her car. They finally have a more sibling-like relationship, talking to one another without any gaps. Suddenly, an unknown car drives beside them, with Georgians shooting at them. Aisha instantly takes the wheel while confessing to Tina. She tells Tina everything about her life, about how she was raised and why someone wants her dead. Aisha almost hits a truck and takes a hard turn into a car scrapyard. Despite this, the chaser is still on their tail, and they meet a dead end. They continue to have a showdown and eventually cause the pursuer's car to crash. Luckily, Aisha and Tina survive the crash. Aisha checks on the pursuer's car and can only smell Sandra's perfume inside it. At the hospital, Aisha tells Richard about Sandra. It turns out Richard didn't send Sandra. Richard believes that Sandra died when Peterson escaped. After connecting the dots, Aisha realizes that Sandra is working for Peterson. She asks for her gear back, but Richard rejects it as she is no longer at Ebony Vale. After Tina wakes up, Aisha apologizes for lying and putting her in danger. Aisha wants to leave to get the Olalades out of danger's way. However, Tina doesn't want Aisha to leave. When Aisha is about to give up, she sees Donald's picture of her being part of the family with the Olalades. She hugs Donald and enthusiastically goes back to Tina, only to find that George is there with her. After completing the session, Tina goes outside and agrees to fight Peterson together with Aisha. In the morning, Aisha briefs Tina on the strategy, and they prepare themselves for one hell of a homecoming. They have so much fun together until night falls. The night after, Aisha and Tina are picked up by their boys for the homecoming dance. As they arrive, Tina and George are clearly enjoying their time. Aisha and Wallace, on the other hand, are a bit awkward, with nothing to say to each other. Aisha tries to make jokes with her puns, but Wallace just doesn't get it. Seeing the one person who truly gets her, Aisha dumps Wallace right before his concert and approaches Philip. She apologizes to Philip and tells him that he is the person she wants. Unfortunately, Sandra has already worked her way to Philip and is now dating him. Without further ado, Aisha initiates a fight with Sandra, followed by continuous attacks. The fight turns the party into chaos. Sandra picks up a metal bar and swings it around skillfully, but she still can't hit Aisha. With a fire hose, Aisha lands a blow on Sandra's abdomen and even pins her down. Sandra pours some dust on Aisha, forcing her to flee the scene. While looking for Aisha, Sandra reveals that Peterson is targeting the Olalades. When Sandra is about to stab Aisha, Tina stabs Sandra's leg with a corn dog, and Aisha takes her out swiftly. Tina is so proud and excited about what she did. They rush home and take down a Georgiard. Aisha enters the house while holding Peterson at Georgian Point. During the conversation, Peterson reveals that she is the first Ebony Vale, #1. Suddenly, another Georgiard enters, holding Tina hostage. Feeling cornered, Aisha surrenders and drops her Georgian. Aisha cunningly challenges Peterson to a fair fight, and they start right away. When Peterson is about to get beaten up by Aisha, Peterson pulls out her Georgian. Luckily, Donald throws a flashbang, giving Ebony Vale agents a chance to storm the house. They skillfully take out Peterson's men one by one. Richard himself eventually captures Peterson. Aisha hugs Richard for coming back for her. Richard finally confesses that he too has attachments, with Aisha, his beloved student. He also recruits Aisha back to Ebony Vale as a deep cover agent and allows her to live with the Olalades. Isha goes back to the party and finds Wallace and the teacher getting along, but she can't find Philip anywhere. Philip has been picked up by his dad and is on his way home. Suddenly, Aisha descends from a helicopter, confessing her feelings to Philip and inviting him on another date. Philip accepts, and the two couples, Aisha and Philip, Tina and George, fly away with a smile. Aisha finally finds her attachments, which makes her life much more precious and worth living. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share.